call to order the Okeechobee Utility Authority Board of Directors meeting for August 9th, 2021. I get everybody to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to have determination of voting members. Ms. Anderson, Mr. Clay.
Here.
Creasman's here. Jeff Fadley. Mr. Moldenhauer.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
Ms. Trent. Mr. Snyder. Okay, we have 4 members, and we're all going to be voting today.
All right.
Agenda item number 2, the meeting minutes from July 12th, 2021. Any errors or omissions?
Motion that we accept as written.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. I have a...
Discussion, please.
Yes, go ahead, Harry.
Indicates Tabitha Trent was absent and a voting member.
That's correct.
So she can't be both.
She's a voting member, but what the record should reflect is Glenn Snyder is voting in her absence. So the vote count is off. Should be 5-0. So we'll show, what we normally do,
She wouldn't be listed as a voting member, though she's absent.
what we
She
would
wasn't voting.
normally do is add two asterisks behind Glenn Snyder and say voting in Tabitha's absence,
Exactly,
is what we need to do
right.
as a correction.
And then change the vote count to 5 votes.
That is
instead of
correct.
4 votes, since we had a full board.
Tabitha was there?
No, she is a voting
Oh,
member,
okay.
but she was absent. So in her absence, there'll be 2 asterisks by Mr. Snyder, and it will 2 asterisks say voting in her absence, or voting in Miss Tabitha's absence.
Okay, very good.
And remove the asterisk after Tabitha. Okay. Any other errors or omissions? Want to amend your motion to accept the changes?
I make a motion, we accept the changes.
Motion by Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 3 is our consent agenda. Any board member wish to have any items pulled? Being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept the consent agenda as is.
Motion, Mr. Nelson. Second, Mr. Clay. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to go all the way down to 16. I almost jinxed us and said we're going to be moving fast today, but I'm not going to say that. Agenda item number 16, fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 26 financial forecast. John?
Mr. Chairman, board members, we are here today to give you the financial forecast as presented by Raftalis, formerly Public Resource Management Group. Mr. Murray Hamilton is here and is here to do the presentation of this forecast. Had it on a thumb drive, was sent to you separately, and he's here. We'll do the presentation, and then we'll open up to questions or comments during or after the presentation is over. So, Mr. Hamilton.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chair, and board members. Again, for the record, my name is Murray Hamilton. I'm a senior manager with Raftalis. And, you know, while we had a brief presentation earlier in this year, the last time we actually presented the financial forecast to this board was about 1.5 years ago, right before everybody went into quarantine. We met with y'all, I think it was January or February of 2020. During that time, we looked at a similar 5-year financial forecast. We were projecting utility rate adjustments of about 2% per year. In April 1st of 2020, this board did adopt a 2% rate increase in conjunction with refinancing your 2017 BB&T loans. Subsequent to that, even for 2021, another 2% rate adjustment was also adopted. What we put together this summer for this board is a comprehensive update of the rate study. What I'll tell you is in our opinion, we're still on plan. In the near term, we're looking at approximately 2% rate adjustment, something close to inflation. We'll go through a lot of the details. What I do want to highlight is, at least from our perspective, we think OUA has a lot of flexibility. So, you know, while we're preparing a financial projection, while you're going to be considering your fiscal year 2022 operating and capital budgets, I think looking forward, you're going to have a little bit of flexibility, and that has a lot to do with the strong financial position of the utility in terms of cash position, as well as strong debt service coverage compliance. And so I think you'll see that as we go through the document. You know, we'll talk a little bit about the existing conditions and some of our major issues. Please keep in mind, we're just going to touch on the major issues at a high level. I'm sure you're going to have some questions, and I think as we go through some of the major assumptions, we might be able to address some of those. Certainly, if you have questions as we go through the document, I'll be happy to help address that. We're going to talk about the capital needs, specifically those that we're going to be funding on an annual basis through utility rates. Again, as I said, the major assumptions, overall revenue sufficiency, and then we do have some comparisons for you in terms of the options that we've been considering. So the financial forecast, again, is predicated on the proposed budget that's being prepared for fiscal year 2022. It addresses both the operating as well as the capital needs. The budget level growth assumptions, if you will, for infill development, still pretty modest. We've always kind of planned that way, just under 0.5% of customer growth per year for both the water and wastewater systems. Now, as this board knows, OUA has initiated several wastewater expansion projects that are moving through the capital plan as we talked. The majority of it heavily grant funded. A lot of credit there for staff pursuing those types of funding opportunities. You have Southwest Service Area Phases 1 and 2, including Okatani, funded with a combination of grants. Again, the majority of that project is completely funded with grants. There's a smaller portion that right now we're assuming is going to be the USDA loan, which is a lot less than what we thought this time about 18 months ago. Pine Ridge is also funded with a combination of sources, both grant revenues as well as some existing reserves that the utility system already has in possession. Over our next 3 years of the study period, staff estimates connecting about 600 additional wastewater connections, again associated with these expansion projects. The annual average increase in revenues over the 5-year period is about 1.2% per year on average. By the 5th year of the study period, it's an increase in system revenues of about $700,000 a year. And by that last year of the forecast period, I think that's important as we think about the operating expenses and capital needs, not just on a national and global level, but even local to OUA. There's a lot of uncertainties that are out there right now in the economy. And so we're trying to be conservative. We're trying to make some estimates about that. Later on in this package, we'll talk a little bit more about our growth assumptions in terms of operating expense. The overall projections is about a 4% increase per year in operating expense. Cumulatively, by the 5th year, it's a $1.5 million increase in cost. So $700,000 increase in revenue, $1.5 million increase in operating expenses. So we are adding new customers, but we think there's going to be some inflationary pressure that's out there. And some of those principal drivers, of course, include this newly adopted minimum wage standard here in the state of Florida that staff has planned through this forecast in order to comply with and meet. There's unpredictability of the commodity costs centered around power and fuel and chemical expenses. We do have 2 new positions, sewer maintenance workers, again to support the growth of the Southwest Service Area. And right now we're assuming that they would come on in 2023. Again, that may be subject to change depending on how quickly those projects move forward. In terms of the capital expenditures and capital maintenance requirements, you know, the infrastructure's aging. We know that. I would say that in our next 5 years, built into the capital plan is probably fairly modest. When we think of depreciation expense that shows up in your financial statements, the annual funding requirement is about 35% of depreciation. So I suspect that some of these items are gonna likely increase, that the annual costs are gonna increase over time as new deficiencies are observed and identified in the system. They primarily relate to water and sewer line replacements, lift station additions and upgrades, and manhole rehabilitation. And of course, these are outlined in your 2022 budget document. There's a 5-year projection of what those recurring maintenance costs are. And again, just my personal perspective, I think they're a little bit modest. A lot of our infrastructure is underground. It's hard to know what next year's requirement may be. I think staff's made a plan of that. As the system continues to age, I would see the annual contribution to renewal and replacement get closer to maybe 50% of depreciation, at some point 75% of depreciation, and long-term could eventually exceed your depreciation rate. So just keep that in mind. It's a plan. On slide 6, we have the projected cash flows based on, again, on the 2022 budget document that staff has put together. This is presented to you on a flow of funds basis. We've got total system revenues of approximately $11 million for the budget year. Operating expenses just under $8 million. It's 72% of that operating budget, and along with your debt service payments of $2.4 million per year. Collectively, they're almost 95% of your budget, just through operating expenses as well as the debt service requirements. We've got some minimal transfers in order to maintain the board's policies regarding its reserve fund policies. And so in the big picture, what it leaves is approximately $600,000 for the year to fund ongoing capital maintenance needs that we were talking about on the previous page. Now, going forward on the next chart, the next 4 years, the rate funded capital, if you will, averages about $950,000 per year. Now, what I will highlight here, slide 7, is it looks like an increase from 22 to 23, but in reality, if you look in the details of the 2022 budget, there's another $300,000 worth of capital maintenance needs that are actually being funded with reserves. Okay, so staff has projected that we'll have that money. We have that money in the bank today, and so a portion of the reserve or the capital maintenance requirements for fiscal year 2022 are being funded with reserves. Obviously, that's not sustainable as we start planning into the new years. And so again, this comes from the capital plan that's at the back of the budget document. In addition to capital needs that are directly funded through rate revenues annually, there are a couple projects that we're currently anticipating will result in new debt. Staff has preliminary estimates, both from the state revolving fund loan program to fund a portion of the advanced metering infrastructure. Again, this $2.2 million loan is after applying for grants, applying for and receiving grants. So this is the non-grant portion of the project. If it moves forward, it will result in annual debt service payments of just under $120,000 per year for the 20-year period. And then, of course, we've got the non-grant funded portion of the Southwest Service Area project. Again, this is that assumed USDA loan over a period of 40 years. This loan requirement has continued to decline as the new grant awards have come in. Likewise, over the 40-year period, the estimated debt service is approximately $120,000 again for that period. And you can see how it impacts your debt service payments over the forecast period. So our study passed, pretty normal 5-year financial forecast through 2026. We've developed a funding strategy to look at all the operations, the capital needs, upgrades of the system. We're estimating the revenue requirements primarily to be recovered from your user rates. We do test compliance with your lender debt service coverage ratios, if you will. And more specifically, this board has a budget target similar to what you saw on one of the earlier slides. And our strategy here is really to try and phase in the proposed rates to the extent that we can. It's a steady hand approach. At least within OUA, it's been a proven management approach in order to address the budgetary needs of the system. And we think over time it provides this board a lot of flexibility in terms of how it wants to fund the annual requirements. OUA, evaluates its needs annually through the budget process. That's what you're doing here today. Periodically, we update the financial forecast, and again, that was last completed 18 months ago. And again, from our perspective, we think we're on plan. The planning approach allows OUA to evaluate all sources, both existing and future, to meet the system needs over time. And of course, as we said, we've looked at operating expenses, capital requirements, required transfers, as well as the overall reserve fund balances. The projected gross revenues of the system, a little bit more detail. We talked about the infill growth rate, just under 0.5% per year. When we add in the wastewater expansion growth, it's almost a 3% annual increase in wastewater customers over that 5-year period. Granted, OUA staff believes that those connections will happen between 2023 and 2025. Again, a total of approximately 6 connections. I will point out, this board has elected annually to revisit whether it continues to discount capital connection charges and other new fees that are paid by developers. At least for the purposes of this financial forecast, we've assumed that that discount is going to continue to apply for the entire 5-year period. I would tell you, at least based on our planning criteria, if the board elected to make a different choice, it would not materially affect the outcomes of our rate path. So again, we at least evaluated that. So revenue projections, again, over the 5-year period. The grand total for the system is shown at the top. Again, about a $700,000 increase in revenue over that 5-year period. Again, operating expenses. Here are some of those details that we promised. Again, predicated on the fiscal year 2022 operating budget. We've had to make some assumptions about operating expenses starting in 2023 and beyond. Labor and benefits are projected to increase 4% annually. Again, that's to comply with the new minimum wage standards within the state. Health insurance is a little bit unique. Increases in costs are assumed to be passed on through increases in employee contributions, but we allow the system cost to increase under 2 adjustments, a 6% adjustment in 2023 and another 6% adjustment in 2026. That's based on historical experience within the system. It's an annual average increase in healthcare costs of about 2% per year. And again, that's our current allowance at this time. Property and liability insurance, 1.5%. Again, that's above what's currently reflected in your current 2022 budget. Repairs and maintenance, 3%. Repairs and maintenance usually tracks a little bit higher than CPI. We use the engineering news record as a gauge for that, and at the moment, it's continued to track about 3% a year. Electric, gas, chemicals. Be careful what you read in the paper. Measurement data is important. These are commodities. It's hard to really predict what's happening in the economy. We've assumed a base level increase of 5% per year in these types of costs, plus customer growth. So as we generate more water or we are treating more wastewater, there's also an increase in those variable expenses as well. Congressional Budget Office is still projecting nominal inflation at 2.3% per year. So they're holding their line in terms of their monetary policy. And then lastly, we plan for 2 new employee positions, again, starting in fiscal year 2023. A projection of those expenses are shown for you on slide 13. Again, an increase in costs over the 6-year period of 5-year period of $1.5 million. Again, as revenues also increase about $700,000 over that same 5-year period. Cash reserve policy and available resources. Much of this, I know the board is well aware of. The minimum required cash reserve balance is approximately $3 million. It's made up primarily of 3 specific funds: the renewal set equal to 5% of gross revenues. And that, again, that comes to us not only from the board's resolution, but also from the lending covenants. The board has established an emergency reserve fund as well as an operating reserve fund. Both are, in total, are equal to approximately 120 days of operating expense.
I thought you did. Yeah, can't talk right now.
The emergency fund and operating fund, again, are set equal in combination to 120 days of operating expense. Again, this board, through its budget process, evaluates the level of those funds each budget year in order to determine what the required transfers are going to be. Going into the current budget cycle, OUA has approximately $4.6 million in additional cash reserve balances above minimum requirements. And I'll point out that the budget does identify more than $2 million worth of existing reserves that are going to be used to help fund the capital project needs. There's $1.8 million in the rate stabilization fund, approximately $700,000 in the future CIP fund, $200,000 in the fire protection fund, $1 million in capital connection charge fund, and again, in the operating account, just under $1 million at $900,000. And as we think about the minimum reserve fund levels, slide 15 at least provides an estimate of what we think those annual transfers are going to be. And again, at best, it's an estimate. The board's going to reevaluate these transfer levels each and every budget year. Again, the operating expense and the emergency reserve fund requirements are based on the operating expense levels in each year. The transfers to the renewal and replacement fund are going to be based on estimated revenue sources. And then, of course, you continue to segregate monies into your fire protection fund in order to address those needs. So slide 16 provides you a summary of the revenue sufficiency under the current rates as they're adopted today. You can see your proposed budget just for your 2022. It's a balanced budget. It's based on a break-even cash flow for the revenue requirements for that year. Over the study period, again, we don't anticipate that we're going to be able to perpetually continue to fund those recurring capital maintenance costs on an ongoing basis from reserves. So at some point, the rate revenues have to be able to cover those annual expenditures. The cumulative deficiency by the fifth year of the forecast period is approximately 14% of current revenues, just under $1.6 million cumulatively by that fifth year of the study period. What I'd like to point out, we're going to talk about some cost drivers, some cost recovery considerations that we've made in this financial plan. And what you're going to see in those rate paths is at least today, we're not recommending a cumulative rate increase of up to 14%. We think this board has some flexibility in the short term, that will allow you to be able to walk through this plan a little bit more. But it will require this board and staff to continue to measure and monitor the actual results as we continue to move forward. So the principal drivers, again, of the rate plan, of course, is to ensure that revenues keep pace with the inflationary effects on both operating and capital requirements of the system, to continue to fund the recurring capital maintenance items through user rates, maintaining your cash reserve policy, exceeding your minimum debt service coverage requirements, and again, specifically your budget target of not less than 120% for your senior and junior lien loans. And again, historically, OUA has recognized a positive to actual variance in each year. Any time that we've looked, we performed a little bit better than what we planned. And in those years, when actual results have exceeded the budget, this board has used the proceeds to then fund necessary capital improvements. So in order to set our rate path for this study period, we basically assume a budget to actual variance of approximately 3% of revenues in the near term that will allow you the ability to help phase in the rate strategies that are shown on slide 18. So we wanted to demonstrate the flexibility that we've talked about throughout this presentation. Scenario 1 is our proposed scenario. And when putting together these scenarios, what I would point out is that each scenario achieves a similar break-even cash flow by so the trade-offs here, as you look at the various assumptions and scenarios, and we'll go through them here in a moment, the trade-offs are how the customer's bill adjusts over time, because again, each of them achieves about a similar bill by the fifth year. And then secondly, what the overall operating account balance is at the end of the study period. So for scenario one, which is our proposed scenario, again, it remains on plan. It's an annual increase of approximately 2% per year. The last year of the study period is showing a 2.5% increase. That's to be determined, as staff continues to evaluate these opportunities. To demonstrate the flexibility, what we wanted to do is provide you a few options that you can see here. Can we afford to delay the 2022 rate increase? Obviously, we can. There is a cost. Not only does it result in a slightly higher rate increase over the remaining 4 years, again, to achieve the same break-even cash flow, but if you look at the operating account by the last year, you also sacrifice about $500,000 in the operating account, which could also help you mitigate other changes within the plan. Scenario 3 looks at staying steady in fiscal year 2022. What happens if we decide to delay the rate adjustment in 2023? And again, you can see that rate plan. Again, the outcome by the fifth year of the study period is a sacrifice on operating account reserves, if you will. And then scenario 4 is just looking, if we tried to address the deficiencies in a stepped approach. Again, the scenarios are quite frankly unlimited. We wanted to demonstrate to you that you have some flexibility, which you do. There are some trade-offs, depending on what approach you might take. What I'll point out about scenario 1 is if in fact, if you do get into year 4 and 5, and the 2.5% rate increase for year 5 is in fact 2%, scenario 1 results in the lowest possible bill, but yet still provides $900,000 in the operating fund above all your other minimum requirements that's out there relative to these other scenarios. So again, scenario 1 is our recommended alternative. In considering that, on slide 19, we have a recent rate comparison that shows the typical residential bill, both water and wastewater service combined. If adopted for October 1st, 2021, for the next fiscal year, 2% rate increase would increase the bill $2.39 to $122.92. And you can see the other utilities that are here. We have many municipal as well as other county utilities. As we've tried to demonstrate also, several of these municipal governments also apply an outside city surcharge for the utility customers that are outside the city limits. Now, they do range. Most of the city surcharges are up to 25%. Some are at 10, some are at 15, some only apply to the water system. But again, that information is provided for you as well.
When you guys did your scenario 1,
Yes, sir.
did you look at us retiring debt in 2025 of $700,000 a year?
For 2025,
Because all our debt retires out pretty much by 30. But we got one, was it called Truce
Right.
20A?
we do have changes in debt, and we accounted for that. Grab my paper.
Because that one zeroes out on 30 of 2025. It's a principal payment, $700,000.
Yes, so the 2028 bonds, they zero out in 2026, but then the 2020B bonds increase in payment in 2026, such that the annual debt service payments are actually an increase. So we go from an annual.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there now.
It's a-
Yeah, it is.
It's with a wraparound.
Yeah, it just trades over.
Yes,
It
sir.
does,
Okay, I see you now.
but we did account for it.
Okay. We just moved it from one pile to the other.
Right. That's why we could keep level debt.
Yep.
I thought you had me there.
Well,
I admit, and I missed that it jumped. I looked at a final date there, and I'm like, okay, well, we've got that, so.
The financial advisor, we refer to it as wrapping. They strategically wrap the loan in order to help keep the debt service payments as level as possible, to reduce the rate pressure on the customers at the time that those loans are issued.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure that I caught that.
So again,
And I did.
residential rate comparison, this is the cash flow projections. Again, in these projections, we've assumed what we think is a modest allowance, 3% annual budget to actual variance. So we're assuming relative to your 2022 budget estimate that's been proposed by city staff, that at least in the near term, the system's going to perform a little bit better than the budget. Again, we think it's an area you have some flexibility, but this body is going to want to continue to monitor that each year as actual results are come in. You can see early on we are using reserves in 2023. We maintain that break-even cash flow by the last year of the study period. This slide, I think really does help to highlight flexibility. So we have your minimum reserve requirement, that's below the line, the black line there, towards the bottom half of the page. Again, made up of your rate stabilization, or your renewal and replacement fund, the emergency reserve fund, and the operating reserve fund. Now, in the cash reserves above the minimum requirement, again, assuming that scenario one is adopted by this board, we would continue to maintain in the operating account, the future CIP fund, as well as the rate stabilization fund, approximately $2 million in those accounts. And so, again, at least in the near term, if you don't perform as we projected, and you're closer to your budgeted expenditures, then at least you have some cash reserves to address that shortfall in the period and possibly revisit this rate plan. So in summary, our conclusions here are that the revenues under the current rates are not adequate for the entire 5-year study period. The fiscal year 2022 budget year revenues are adequate to fund what's in the budget, which is $600,000 in capital improvement needs, again on a pay-as-you-go basis. The future capital maintenance expenses are projected to be approximately $950,000 per year. Again, I think that's fairly modest. It's 35% of the annual depreciation rate. I think as staff identifies new deficiencies, I would anticipate that amount to go up at some point. In order to fully fund the AMI project, as well as to complete the Southwest service area expansion, including Pine Ridge, in total, $5.7 million in new debt over the study period will be phased in, we believe, over fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Total annual payments for both loans, if approved, will be roughly $239,000 per year. And again, we think the best way to fully fund this plan is to begin with a 2% annual increase starting this October, at least for the next 4 years. And we're going to have to wait and see if the 2.5% rate increase materializes for 2026. Again, we would anticipate that the proposed rate increase at a minimum would apply to the monthly base charges for both water and wastewater service, as well as the volumetric charges, the consumption rates. This board has some flexibility. In some years, you may apply the 2% increase also to other charges of the system, like miscellaneous fees, turn on, turn off. And again, we think this board should continue to update this study, certainly as actual results may vary, but at a minimum, at least every 2 to 3 years. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the presentation.
Mr. Hamilton, thank you very much. Very, very thorough and informative. Any questions from the board?
What if we started off, instead of 2%, 2.5%?
To do 2.5%?
Right.
A matter of fact, when we looked at scenario one, so scenario one, before, when I first presented it, I had 2.5% in 2022. And as such, the 2026 figure then dropped to 2%. Okay, so we're still getting to about the same bill but it would produce a little bit more cash in the operating account where we have 900,000 at that fifth year.
Right.
By doing it 2.5% sooner than later in the forecast period, that amount would be a little bit greater. I didn't bring that number with me, but, you know, it might be 1.1 million. You know, it's in the same ballpark, is my point.
Are you saying
And so again,
2.5% across the board?
Well, going back in time, Melanie's not here, when we wanted to be the good guys, okay, and not raise the rates, we kept it low. And then all of a sudden, boom, we had to jump all the way up. I don't want to get into that situation. On the same token, taking into consideration that these are very trying times amongst people, and especially in our area, quite a few indigent people, where money is very, very, very tight right now. I don't want to hit them with a high bill, but if we went like 2.5% or even 3%,
Yeah, I think you better go 3.
okay, 3%, and then, let's say year 23, 24 goes to 3.5%, that would give us, I believe, the capital that we would need. Because there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in Washington, D.C. right now. And anything, you know, can happen, but looking at that, your figures and everything, a $3 or $4 increase, I think would be workable.
With what's going on in the world today, and I'm in the transportation side, for the first time in some companies' histories, they're telling customers, no, I can't bring you stuff. And I'll give you a prime example. Company I was with all my life takes care of Publix. Publix is hard to deal with. Food grade. They had a load of sugar show up a week ago Friday. They took half of it. They didn't feel like switching tanks. Sent the load back. They called my son Saturday morning and said, send it back. He said, it'll be there Tuesday night. No more of that. You're going to bring it right back. You're going to go now you're going to get in line and wait like everybody else is waiting because the driver force is gone. We're raising our driver pay and all over my regions with the company I'm with now to $300 a day minimum. Waste Management just raised in the state of Florida, just their salaried people went up $15.7 million a year, just in Florida alone. South Carolina and North Carolina went up 14.7. They're paying a garbage truck driver, front load, rear load, whatever. In Atlanta now, they work 60 hours a week. They make $109,000 a year. We haven't felt those effects yet. They're getting ready to come back and raise everybody's. They're going to fight to raise everybody's stuff. Nashville, Tennessee has went from a pickup every week to a pickup every other week because they don't have people. So my point is, I think we have to be a little aggressive on this. We can always back it off on the other end. But I think with what I see coming, with fuels jumping all over the place, tires are just, $200 tire is now $450. You know, so all those things haven't caught up to the consumer yet. You know, because we're absorbing it on the transportation side, fighting to raise our rates. And we've been very successful. We've got 10% this year. And most of it's to try to hold on to employees. So I really think you need to look at the 3% just to stay. I don't know that you'll be ahead of the curve, but maybe stay pace with it. Because we're only beginning to see what's coming. And with this new infrastructure bill going out, you know, we don't even know what our tax load's going to be, anything. So I do know what it's costing me to hire people, and I cannot hire. I've got 25, 30 open positions today. And that's national. everybody's got 25 or 30% of their trucks parked. They can't get drivers. So it's, I think you really need to look at, I don't wanna be like y'all did when y'all had to do 10% that year and everybody wanted to scalp you.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather do 3 now and be able to explain it.
Are you talking about 3% every year for the next 5 years?
No, I'm talking about do 3
Just
this
the
year and
first
then
shot?
do 3 now, and then we'll negotiate, and we'll sit down and look at what our year has done. But I'd hate to go nothing, or 2, or 1, or whatever, and then next
Like
year have to
catch up.
go 5. I'd rather go 3, and next year, maybe we don't even have to go, maybe we go 1, maybe we go 2. But I would hate to get to that point where we've got to jump that 7 or 8% at one time. Again, we just did, I mean, with waste management, I just did 10.
To quantify, what you said, so our 2% increase, again, is shown in our rate comparison, under scenario 1 is $2.39. 2.5%, that was mentioned, is $3.01, and this is water and wastewater service combined. And a 3% increase is $3.62. So that, again, that's, you said $3 to $4, that obviously that's within the range there.
Yeah, I mean, it's $3.60 on your average. You know, it's not like I'm not gonna be paying it. You know, I'm not on.
We're all ratepayers.
Yeah, we're
Right.
ratepayers. Y'all won't bring me no sewer, but, and I can hit the sewer line with a rock. But,
Stop. It's been raining.
but again, I just think we have to be realist about this, as bad as I hate to raise anything, and I have fought to keep this down ever since I've been on this board. But I think to be fair to ourselves and fair to our rate holders, or ratepayers, that we have to look at what's best. And, I mean, yeah, we're close. We're 8 years away from, or 9 years away from being, well, than the new debt there. I mean, but you're gonna wipe out a lot of debt. Yeah, a lot of debt. 18 million,
Around 20.
yeah, and 24 or 5. So, you're wiping out $25 million worth of debt in the next 9 years. So,
It's 21 million, not counting the interest.
yeah, so.
That's a good piece of change.
So each of those increments also, so a 0.5% rate increase is equal to about $50,000 in additional revenue each year. So again, going from 2 to 2.5% would add $50,000 to the, and I'm using round numbers here, to the budget document that you're reviewing. Because, George, correct me if I'm wrong, the current proposal has the 2%.
Right, it's between 50 and 55,000 for each half a percent.
And so then as you go to 3%, if you do go to 3%, that's a little bit more than $100,000 relative to the budget.
Right. And when we do a rate increase, we increase everything, including the miscellaneous ones, just not the water and sewer.
With any rate increases, John, do we have to do a public hearing and advertise and all of that? Are we gonna be able to meet the timeline of our budget?
The public hearings are scheduled for the next board meeting. Because we
So
adopt,
we would be, if we raised to 2.5% to 3%, we'd be okay for the budget year.
yes, sir, because you're also gonna address the sunsetting issue as to whether or not you wanna continue the 75. So there will be public hearings set for the next board meeting.
That was my concern, that we.
And it's
I
already,
deviated from that.
if you understand, it is already set for 2%. So
Right.
if you wanna go to 3 or 2.5, we just modify it. We modify the document you have here for the final document to reflect any changes made between now and then.
What's staff's feeling on whether we should go 2 or 3 or?
I'll leave that one to George.
I'll answer your question. question indirectly without answering your question.
You got a law degree?
No. But I do have an
Listen to
MBA.
him closely,
I was
please.
listening quite carefully, yes.
If you go back to the financial report it's in your book there, page 2. Not the budget, the financial report in the.
In the consent agenda,
Page what?
Page 2 of the financial report.
Four. Agenda item 4.
So page 2 is right after the executive summary. All right, so if you go to this page, you'll see net operating income about in the middle of the top section. And it shows we have a positive variance for the year of $1,591,000. We're having a strong year. That number a year ago was $1,080,000. So we're doing $500,000 and we did better than last year. And we ended up the year at 3.8 million last year. Last year, we ended up at 3.8. So we're doing, in this fiscal year, we're doing substantially better than last fiscal year, which was one of the best years since I've had here. And then you think about the fact that we got 3 million in reserves to fall back upon. We have insurance, and I'm bringing these things up because what you don't know is if we're going to have a hurricane, and you don't know if the water could get contaminated. Very unlikely, but those are two things that we can't predict. So it's how conservative you want to be. We do have $3 million in the bank for reserves. Our property liability insurance is where it should be, and then in that property liability insurance, we have business interruption coverage. So we have things to fall back upon if, for some reason, we don't end the year the way we're projecting right now, the way it's going. So if you want to be conservative, 2.5%, 3.5% will work. If you want to do less, it should work too, because as Murray has said many times, we have substantial flexibility.
let me answer it a different way. The rate increase that we're talking about this year is not only for '22, but it's projecting forward for '23, '24, and '25. So if you elect to do the 2%, we're more than good for the coming year. But if you're looking forward to this 5-year planning horizon and trying to do more with less later on, then the benefit is the 3% or 2.5%. It's not to meet '22 concerns, it's to meet it by the time you get to FY '26.
Correct.
Exactly, absolutely.
So George is really good about telling you about next year, and that's fine, but you really want to look at the planning horizon for this presentation, which is all the way to '26. And so the benefit of it is going 2.5 or 3%, not for next year, it's for '26. So that's
It's
kind of where,
accumulation.
that,
Right.
does that help answer your question, Harry?
No. I mean, I knew that.
All right, what was the question?
What is
What's your recommendation? I mean.
Why don't you put the scenarios back
From,
up there,
from,
Murray?
from my recommendation is there is, if we're for me, looking at the '26 horizon, 3% is not necessarily a bad decision. Going forward, looking at FY '26. We know through that planning horizon, it's 10.5%. So 3 is well within that planning horizon. And to give us a better position for the coming years, whether that's '23 or '24, the 3% is going to put us in a better position. When I look at what we've done over the last year and the way things have changed drastically, I have no comfort as to what 22 is going to be bringing us.
The governor of New Orleans and all, or the governor of New Orleans, the governor of Louisiana, one of my associates that works with me is very close to that group. And when I talked to them Friday, they were talking about shutting down the state. The governor was talking about closing the state again, Louisiana. So we could see more sporadic shutdowns around the country, which is gonna affect us all. I mean, it's just, everything goes through somewhere. And fuel and chemicals, I think, is gonna be, I think the chemical side of this thing is gonna continue to drive. Because it's harder and harder to get people to work in those scenarios, and transportation's just gonna continue to get worse.
In approximately 18 months, our capital improvement is gonna start bringing new customers online. With that comes costs, of course. Would this help or hinder us at this point to go to 3% to be ready for that influx of all these new customers? Or at 2%, are we planning for that now that the 2 extra people we're hiring, I understand, which I think is very, well, I think you're gonna be needing more than 2 people for 600 new customers, but that's for your decision, not mine. But would it benefit to go ahead and raise the 3% now to prepare for the influx of all the new customers?
It's easier to sell it now because they don't have a vote.
They don't have a voice at this point.
It's kind of hard to follow that. Mr. Chairman, board members, the deal is with bringing on new customers, there is always going to be added expense to the OUA. The trade-off is with the added expense to the OUA, they're going to pay their monthly bill now. So I tend to believe there is not going to be a significant change in 500 customers when we talk about, or 600 customers, whatever it is. We already have 4,500. So it's going to be an impact for sure, but I don't think it's going to be a terribly big impact because they are going to offset it with revenue.
And a lot of that stuff down there is gonna be just big, like the parks are all just gonna be a main meter, right?
Well, now, that is if you're talking about the Okatani extension.
Well, I mean, you're going right in front of all those parks.
Right. The ones that's gonna give us the 500 or 600 is more along, like Oak Park.
Park and all
and,
that, yeah.
Eagle Bay, going
Yep.
down that, where you're gonna have the 1 and 2 units connecting it.
And John's house.
Maybe. I've been holding my breath for a year now, I'm about to pass out.
I think we need to be a little more aggressive than we have been in the past.
Definitely, inflation's hitting us from every direction, in the grocery store, at the gas station, everywhere, so we wouldn't be out of line with everybody else if we increased an extra percent.
We've gotta be able to maintain this thing the way we've done, the way it's been handed down, is we gotta continue the maintenance. I mean, and we know there's lines running right here, right by us that are putting the ground in the 60 and 61, because those are the valves you've been pulling out,
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of them.
so
You can always reduce it down the road.
you can always not do anything down the road. You can do a zero. Or, maybe one day they'll come in and grant enough to do some of these bigger places, and this thing can go the other way.
Well, I'd rather see 3% now than 14% in 5 years.
Well, I don't know that that's the two things that, I mean, our financial people here are telling us that 2% a year will do it, though. I mean, so do we want to go an extra percent right now when everybody's hurting.
Well, their assumptions are simply speculations, just like ours.
Sure.
And I know what I'm paying for fuel. I watch it every day. I watch it jump, 4 to 10 cents a day. And it's, very seldom does it go back the other way. Tires are continuing to climb. And that's all coming to you. That's all coming to you, because it's gonna be to the point to who pays the most gets the service in our industry. So when that happens, it trickles right back down to our pockets. I mean, Publix and Walmart and Quaker Oats and all these people, they're not gonna eat that. They just pass it on. So we're just seeing this uptick now. And again, people are fighting over trucks. We're in a small rural community, we don't see it as bad, but people are fighting over getting their deliveries. There's over probably 125,000 loads today that won't even get picked up, that are scheduled to leave today, that won't get picked up. When FedEx walks in and tells, 18% of their customers a month ago, we're done. We're not picking you up anymore.
The private sector, we're getting hit with delivery fees we never had before. I mean, my main concern is to make sure that we have a little bit of a cushion, that we don't have that same scenario that we did when we first started.
If we do increase to the 3% on our 2021 rate scenarios where you have all the different communities, would that change? Because I know a lot of our ratepayers, the only thing they're going to look at is, are we paying more than this? Is it going to take us over to the right a little bit further? Is it going to keep us in the same?
If you do 3%, it's a $3.62 increase relative to the current bill. So that proposed bill would then be $124.15. And again, what the 3% does provide you is it provides you some flexibility about what year 4 or year 5 looks like. You may be able to find that you can skip an increase later in that year. So ultimately, when we're thinking about these scenarios, by doing something a little bit more upfront, you may have flexibility to have the lowest bill out of all of these equations here. It just depends on what the actual outcome may be.
So we got a ooey between 26 and 30.
Yes. Ooh.
We got an ooey. Ooey, this is gonna hurt. Till we get that, because we've got that 4 years that we've got the new debt load and the old debt load. But in 29, one of them goes to half, and I mean, we'll start seeing the effects of it, at the end of the 20s here.
Yeah, but all those scenarios take that into consideration. Your argument about inflation, and especially in the trucking industry, is the only thing that moves me. But that maybe the inflation estimates are way low.
I'm afraid they are.
Yeah.
And I give you a prime example. Google a brand new Ford pickup right now. A half-ton Ford pickup I paid $38,000 for in 2016. I looked at one last night just like it for $62,000. A diesel Ford pickup that I sold to Jeff last year that I paid $58,000 for is now $68,000. Those things are catching up. And a used vehicle is higher than a new vehicle because you can't get new ones. So we're just starting to see this thing tick up.
On the other side, Tommy, is just the Fed keeps saying this is just temporary. Chairman Powell. That's why we didn't,
And we trust him?
I don't know that, but that's why we didn't, when we revised the budget here again, we didn't go, I didn't go crazy increasing the inflation thing. I just increase chemicals because it was apparently obviously too low.
Yeah, chemicals are definitely gonna continue to go, along with fuels and.
But I already had fuels in here at 8.8%.
But again, guys, I'm just being devil's advocate here. I mean, I'd rather do it now than I had do it like when y'all did the 10% one.
And as we've said, the beauty is, whether it's 2%, 2.5%, or 3% for 22, we're gonna be revisiting this in 23, right? For 23. So whether 23 gets to be projected at the 2%, or it's 1%, or nothing, or 3, we're just gonna revisit this in 1 year from now.
Perfect case scenario is everything goes back the other way. But pay's not gonna go back. Pay's
Yeah.
not gonna go the other way.
Amen.
You know, pay's gonna continue to drive.
We got that in this here, though. We got the minimum wage going up $1 a year.
How do retirees get minimum wage? Your pay's going up, mine's staying the same. Okay. Well, you've given us a lot of good information, a lot of good discussion here. Are we ready to make a recommendation? I know we can't act on it. I mean, to readjust the numbers and.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the next item, agenda item, is the budget. And I would suggest we could address the 2% or difference in that agenda.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Okay, I skipped over it. Nope. Any other questions for Mr. Hamilton? We've held you up here long enough, but boy, thank you very much for the information. Very educational.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you in a year, if not sooner. All right, with that being said, let's move on to agenda item number 17, preliminary 22 budget.
Walk you through the agenda item. Revising the preliminary budget we presented in June. Went back and looked at revenues, and there's 3 scenarios of how we project revenues, and I chose one of the other scenarios, and it told me I should use for revenues $102,000. So after reducing revenues $102,000, they're still up 3% over the previous year, approximately $330,000. Then in the middle here, we've been budgeting historically growth rates of 25 for water, 12 for wastewater. And we've utilized those in the FY22 budget. You can see the chart here, what happened if we chose a different discount rate. The chart doesn't show if we chose a higher growth rate than the 25 and 12. Then you go down to the operating and maintenance expenses. Due to the recent pressure because of inflation, cost of chemicals was budgeted an increase to 5%, which resulted in a $27,000 increase in the budget of expenses. Employee Christmas bonus was budgeted to increase from 1% to 1.5%, which basically matched the pre-COVID-19 practices that we had. And that was a $16,000 budget increase. And just since we prepared the budget, due to changes in staff levels, we had a $9,000 increase in our labor costs over those couple months. All of that said, the revisions in the budget increased operating expenses $52,000 to $7,985,000. We didn't make any adjustments to the non-operating expenses or capital expenditures. And so if you go to the next page, you'll see the couple questions we ask you to help us with. Does the board want to continue the 75% discount on capital connection installation charges? Do we want that to continue? If the board wants it, or does the board want to discontinue it or do it at a different rate? So we just need guidance on how the board would like to proceed on the capital connection charges. In terms of the discount or changing the discount.
I like to see it left like it is and go up 3%, but that's me. Because you don't know how many arguments I've won. Because, well, guys, if we hadn't reduced it to, by 75%, this is what you would be paying. And I've won that argument a lot,
I concur, me too.
you know.
Especially people on my street that are looking at wastewater coming down there, and they come to me with these questions,
Yes.
and that is the basis for all discussion.
Oak Lake has been, well, why does it cost this much? Well, it used to cost this much, but we reduced it to this much. And the way I sell that is this is basically like a dead cost, which this might be me fudging a little bit, but that's, when you tell somebody they got $10,000 to hook up sewer and water to their house, it's, you don't get too many more words in after that. But if you say, well, it used to be 10 grand, now we've got it down to this, you automatically get that, you just get a little better presentation to them. And I've got one guy I fight continually about it, but it is what it is. I told him in 2030 we should be able to drop it.
I agree with Tommy. I have no problem keeping it at 75% discount at this point.
I agree.
So would you like us to move forward with this budget at that 75% reduction?
I think we're all in agreement to that.
All right. So we'll,
Do we need a motion?
No, next month,
Do that.
we'll be bringing it back at a public hearing where you can, the rate schedule as it is right now is automatic sunsetting of 9/30. You would just want to extend it for another year.
We'll do that in September,
Yes, sir.
right before the sunset.
all right, so then, the next question is, do we want to make any changes to the revised preliminary FY '22 budget that's being presented today? And the current presentation has a 2% rate increase.
Predicated on the discussion I've heard today, obviously, there's some board members that would like to change it, so what are your wishes, guys?
I mean, I'd like to see us go to 3, and then next year, maybe we only have to do 1 or 2. But I remember when we first started talking about this, we were talking about 2 a year, a couple years ago. Doing 2 a year to try to keep up, but, I'm not sure we don't fudge a little bit this year.
So you're suggesting we change it to 3% a year and then reevaluate?
I would. I know Harry has heartburn with that, but
Yeah. It just seems, it's still a bad time. I mean, people still coming out of COVID and not working and such that, you want to keep it as low as possible. I mean, not that $1 or $2 a month is going to make a lot of difference, but, I agree with your argument that inflation could be much different than projected.
again, I hope I'm wrong. I'd love for you guys to sit here and go, nah, you lied to us. But, from what I see right now, and usually transportation's one of the first ones that's affected going up or coming down.
Yeah, it does affect everything.
These numbers we're looking at are a combination of wastewater and water, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's 9,000 customers out here, many more customers that do not have the wastewater. I'm one of those, and I calculated the 2% increase is less than $1 increase on mine. So 3% would be just barely over $1.
Yeah, you were on a $120 bill, it was $3.60.
That's for both.
Yeah, that's for both.
Wastewater's
Which I
harder
would
than
be
water.
glad to pay that if you'd hook me up to sewer.
Absolutely, I'll dig the ditch for it.
We'll put some shovels in the budget.
I'm desperate, man. What's your thoughts, Steve?
I'm not one that likes to increase, but I think in this particular situation, if we went to 3%, we could always revisit have to roll it back.
We
You know
got
what
plenty
kind
of
of
wiggle room
heroes?
over the next 5 years, so.
You know what kind of heroes we'd be in 2026 if we could roll this thing back a little bit?
Like you said, I mean, we're both in business. I see it from my perspective, where things are going up. I also look at it with respect to what Harry is saying with regard to the individual, that $1 or $2 does make a difference. But putting that aside, we're running a utility, and have always been cautious. We always spend our money very, very wisely. I think the 3% is a good deal that we do it for this year, and as John said, excuse me, revisit it next year.
I think you got your answer.
So you got 3 at 3%, and Harry?
Yeah, I'll go along with it.
All right, there you go. We have a
Revise
consensus.
this document, give you a new one with 3% in it.
Very good.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And
I'm gonna blame that when I get the phone call on the rate forecasting guy.
No, you can blame me.
I just give them the number of the office.
So let me leave you with this thought. You have your latest and greatest preliminary budget. Please look at it. We would still ask individually, if somebody wants to look through it before the next meeting, we would be glad to sit down one-on-one with you, either through telephone or in person, to answer any questions you might have on capital expenditures, expenses, revenue, whatever it may be, long before we get to the September board.
Right.
So please contact us. You can talk to George, myself. Conference call, you can meet here in this room. Please contact us before the September meeting, and we'll be happy to go through it.
John, would you please contact either by email or phone the missing board members and extend that offer to them also?
Yeah, because Tabitha and those guys that are new, I mean, to us, we scroll through it, we've done it long enough that,
We just hit the highlights.
you know, we can, when somebody else is trying to digest, this is their first year on the board, trying to digest all this, and,
Get indigestion.
yeah.
It's kind of overwhelming at times.
I mean, the first thing I go to in any is money in, money out.
Right. That's what it is.
I mean, that's,
It's real simple, you gotta have cash to pay the bills.
that's exactly right. And if it's in red or got a minus in front of it, you got a problem.
Okay, is that all you guys need for? Good deal. Let's move on to agenda item number 18, training incentive program reimbursement. Hayford.
Again, it's here in your board meeting. We routinely meet on a regular basis. Safety committee that's made up of employees from all the treatment plants, water, wastewater, maintenance department, admin, that meets here on a regular basis to discuss our current training program, preventative maintenance, to discuss accidents, to discuss the safety manual. And with that, you can see in here that we do, in that practice, the insurance company recognizes that goal because any accident prevented is better for the employee, then the OUA, and then the insurance company.
We got a deal, I mean, this gift card deal we do, if a guy gets stopped, he gets a DOT inspection, he gets a clean inspection, I give him a $100 card. We do those kind of, same thing, you know.
Do we have 100% participation in this? Do we have 100% participation through the employees in this?
In the safety committee, no. I mean, obviously, it's like 10 or 12 people, but then those folks go back and have the safety meetings within their department. So the answer to that question is, it does filter down to every employee.
I've talked to a couple of your supervisors, and they say, all I can tell you is about our department, and our department was good. I was just wondering if you had a group that weren't being trained and need to be trained before.
Oh, no, everybody receives the there's some overall training, lockout, tagout, or ladder. Some of them are very mundane, ladder safety. But it's the process that we still have to talk about every aspect because you never know where that next accident's coming from.
George, do you have your ladder training?
I have different training.
Okay, I was just curious if it was being offered. to
In the
you.
office, there's a monthly safety bulletin that comes out that we're all required to read and sign off on.
Paper cut, slip and falls.
Yeah. And it covers more than just the office, but anyhow, it makes us aware of things like you're just bringing up.
Thank you. I was just curious.
So you need a motion?
Yep.
Yes, please.
I make a motion that we accept the proposal as recommended by staff to issue a gift card in the amount of $100 to each employee.
Motion by Mr. Nelson,
Second.
second by Mr. Clay. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 19.
Good morning.
Hey, Jeffrey.
We start at 8:30 now, by the way, brother. You didn't get the memo, obviously.
It's not. Better late than
Hey, still good to see you.
See you guys. Man, 8:30, huh?
Agenda item number 19, advanced metering information.
Chairman, board members, we have gone through the process of submitting the request for inclusion to the DEP for the application for SRF financing of the advanced metering information system. Just as a recap, that is to where we can do two things as far as remote access to meters, whether they're supposed to be zero flow, like off and locked, or whether there's excessive flow. We can get that notification through emails, text, some kind of warning. The other benefit is there will be a customer portal where the customers can log on and see where their daily flows are. If they have a question on their bill, why it might be so high, they can go back and see the extended flow over the weekend of the 15th when they had some out-of-town visitors and see how that flow adjusted. So there's the benefit of the customer account. You might be in Indiana and want to know if you get zero flow, and you can get a text that there's flow at your meter. You'll know if somebody's supposed to be there to clean the facility or to water something. You'll get that advance notice. Or like we have in the past, where there's a break in the line and 100,000 gallons has gone through, and we've got a big bill to try to deal with customers. The advanced metering system would handle all of those kind of issues. So what we have here is an advance of the actual loan documents that will be back hopefully at our next meeting. There is this resolution in your package that was delivered to you. Was quite a lengthy water facility plan that was prepared for your review. And this resolution 2103 would be just as a matter of accepting the document, the water facilities plan, and we can submit that to DEP.
Now, the meter readers you have now, you're just gonna flip them up into another position?
The plan right now is to absorb them, yes, sir, into other reads. There will always be meter changeouts that we have to do,
Right.
repair and maintenance, and it might be doing more of that than actual reading of the meters.
John, one of my concerns is we are reaching out for an SRF loan for $2.3 million, if I read the documents correctly. That's what the shortfall we have on the budget of $2.5 million, let's say, plus or minus, I don't remember the exact number. If we're not successful in that $2.3 million SRF loan, wouldn't it be kind of risky to move forward with a project of that size without funding? And by approving this resolution, doesn't that commit us to this project?
That's right, this is only accepting the water facilities plan document. The actual application, excuse me, hasn't even been acted on at Tallahassee yet. They would come back with the actual loan document, and at that time is when you would be authorizing to move forward with the expenditure.
The reason I ask is the wording on this is acceptance of the water facility plan for the implementation of the advanced meter information project. So I assume that was authorization to move forward with the project. This is just funding.
This is adopting the water facilities plan. That water facilities plan does identify the $2.3 million project. Yes, sir. It does do that. It does define it. This is only accepting that document by the OUA board.
I'd hate to sign a document for $2.5 million and we've only got $100,000 grant money. That really does, apples don't equal apples to me right there.
So at this point, that's exactly what we have. The $100,000 grant from the South Florida Water.
Florida Water Commission, correct.
We do expect to get a grant from SRF to help offset the remaining $2.2 million, but I can't tell you right now for sure until we get the loan documents back.
So we need this instrument to move forward with the SRF loan.
In support of the application, yes, sir.
Thank you.
So the 2.5 million loan could be partially grant, then it could be a combination of grant. and loan, or-
Application process is asking for at least a 20% grant funded, which would be, what's that, $400,000?
If I read that correctly, it's a minimum of $75,000 we're asking for in the SRF loan. But the more that grows, the more grants grow, the less that number comes down, if I understood what I read there.
So there will, and all that document will be brought back probably at the next board meeting, and that's where we would, the rubber meets the road. Do we go forward with this project?
So we just need, we don't need a public hearing with this kind of a resolution?
The advance word that I had, we've already had a public hearing here in this office about a month ago, where the public was invited. So we've already had that portion, public hearing. This is just to adopt this resolution.
So we don't need to open and close and all that, we can
There's
just
no public hearing
authorize the
associated.
resolution.
We would just be adopting this resolution. And if that were the case, I can certainly read it by title.
Board's pleasure.
Again, this is not binding you to any loan, any kind of financial package. This is just accepting the water facilities plan, which you had on your thumb drive.
And if we don't do this, we don't know what they're gonna do. So
This is a step in the application process, yes, sir.
I make a motion that we move forward with advanced metering information. Is that what you need?
Resolution number.
Resolution,
2103 that we would adopt.
okay, so said.
Motion by Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Further discussion on the resolution, or on the motion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So just to close out, we should have all those loan documents, probably by the next meeting, and it would be the full plan. We can go over it and answer any questions, and then we decide from there if we move forward. If we move forward, then we'll go out for public bids for contractors and go from there.
Thank you, John. Moving on, agenda item number 20, administration vehicle. Did you make your pick, sir?
There are, as everyone is aware, there certainly is a shortage of new vehicles out there to look at and to even get quotes on, because some of the delivery times are in excess of 3 months or more than to come out. It just so happens that at the local dealership, they have 2 vehicles on their lot, both the Tahoe and the Expedition. I think one of them, the Expedition's white in color.
It's sharp, I looked at it
Tahoe's,
yesterday.
Sir?
It's sharp, I looked at it yesterday.
It's a sharp blade. It's a very nice.
Nice
looking.
vehicle.
And then there is, the Tahoe, I think, is a darker color, like not necessarily black, but a very dark blue. I could not get any quotes for the smaller vehicles like a Traverse, They did have a smaller vehicle, but they couldn't get me a quote on it. The Explorer, because of the length of time, getting those in. So there's lots of different vehicles out there. I do believe, in my own personal opinion, the Tahoes and the Expedition, while the Expedition was very, very nice, it's a tad bit too big for our use. When I could not look at a Traverse this time, but I've seen them before. It's an exceptionally good vehicle, would meet the needs of the OUA admin vehicle.
So you want the Traverse instead of a Tahoe, is that what you're saying?
I believe the Tahoe and the Expeditions are very, very nice. That
Too big.
Expedition that they have waiting on us is a very, very nice vehicle, but I believe it's
The lower
larger
bill?
than what we would be able to utilize.
The Traverse are nice.
He said, I'm not trying to sell the Traverse to the board, but I went on a trip over to Fort Pierce with 3 other guys, and it was quite comfortable. It was every bit as big as my F-150, or my Silverado inside. I was very comfortable in that car.
Was it Tahoe gas or diesel?
Yes.
Gas. All of them are gas. The Expedition would look very nice in Mr. Clay's driveway.
Oh, it was in my driveway at one time.
So if we went with the Traverse, we'd go through, what was it, Stingray?
Well, Stingray is on the Florida Sheriff's contract,
Right.
is the vendor of choice. I would still go back to Gilbert to see if they could,
Get you one?
Match the correct.
well, the benefit, the real benefit of Gilbert, the vehicles are there in their lot. You get them right now. Whereas if you order, could be 3 to 6 months.
And if you order a new F-150, I can tell you where they're at. Train derailed with them Friday in Kansas.
Boy, they should be cheap.
18 rail cars.
Full of F-150s?
They weren't, they knew there was a bunch of F-150s, but there were also some transit vans in there. And they've said they're all gonna be totaled.
Get the chips out of them first, though.
I would hope.
They were probably on the rail line pulling in.
So to answer your question is, we'd still try to work with
Gilbert.
Gilbert to get a quote, or then it would be, if they could get us a quote on a vehicle that's on their lot, so much the better. If not, then we'd have to order it through a dealer, and who knows how long it would be.
The thing about a Traverse is gonna be a lot easier for him to do a dealer trade or whatever, to get one of those than it is if he didn't have a Tahoe. You know what I'm saying? It'll be easier to get this vehicle than it would be if we were going for a Suburban or something.
So paying a little bit more to have the vehicle on the lot is certainly a benefit than waiting 6 months.
Yeah.
We've heard the executive director's opinion. What's the board's position?
He's the one's gotta drive it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
In the truck?
Yeah.
So we don't need to take any action at all then.
You get what you want.
Wait and approve an expenditure
We
when,
gotta approve the expenditure.
when you find your vehicle.
Well, we can certainly do that. I will push it through with Gilbert to see if they get us a quote. We'll compare it against the Florida Sheriff's contract, and then we'll go from there. If, however you want to do it, do you want me to bring you back the actual quote then in
Just bring
September?
the invoice back and we'll approve it, I suppose.
Yeah, they got something down there, don't let it get gone.
Okay. So if they get it, order it, take it, and then we'll just do it after the fact.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do.
I know you're attached to the other one, so we'll sell that to you at a really decent price.
Thank you, sir.
All right, public comment. Hi, Jeff. Jamie, you're not public. Items from our attorney.
None.
Thank you.
How's Tom doing?
Tom, yes.
Tom is doing okay.
Tom's got doctor's appointments all day today.
Today is Tom's last chemo, so I spoke to them. I talk to them every single day. Spirits is good, and just talk with the medication and everything.
he stays in our prayers.
Yeah, because he's got another, what, 21 years or so to catch up with his mom?
Oh, yeah, more.
We're not in a position to tell him goodbye yet. He needs to be at this diocese.
I mean, his mom set the bar pretty high.
She did.
Hey.
All right, agenda item number 23, items from the executive director.
Chairman and board members, you can have all the updates that I have here. I'll be happy to address any one of them. The 441 Southeast water main project went very, very well. I wish I could give you an invoice to pay, but they didn't get that to me, so maybe by next month we'll have that. But the project is in and operational. The other projects are moving ahead. The Oak Lake Estates project is, for the most part, moving quite well with the stormwater and/or the installation of the wastewater project. I can tell you that the only other thing that did not make this, that came up afterwards, I have a presentation to do on the 12th to the BOCC. I guess there was an issue brought up at their last meeting about expansion at the Agri-Civic Center, and that what could the OUA do to assist in providing additional wastewater treatment capacity so that that would not limit their planned expansion out there. So I've been asked to do a presentation to the BOCC on the 12th, of which I emailed that out to you. Certainly will be happy to answer or take any questions you might have over this agenda item or the BOCC.
Would they need the restroom out by the remote control airplanes?
I don't know, but this one's gonna cost us big.
Is can their grant requests include waste disposal line item?
Probably. I mean, that might be a question that I could find out at the presentation on the
Push
12th.
them to participate in our expenditures for their benefit.
For what it's worth, they put in the original pump station and force main to get over to us. So I would assume that they could do the extension of the force main to Pine Ridge Park. But that's kind of preliminary. We're very, very limited at the Everglades treatment plant. We just don't have the capacity.
Well, that's not really an option to expand that, though, is it? I mean,
No, sir.
it's not a direction we want to go, I don't think.
There's no way to expand it. We don't have the property. So the only option is to, if they want to do it now, would be to extend the force main over to Pine Ridge Park.
I thought the presentation was Treasure Island not getting spanked at the Agri-Civic Center.
The way I originally got the request was update on Treasure Island. I submitted that. I got a call back, says, well, where's the help for the Agri-Civic Center? And I go, okay, I'll amend it and show you some of those options. So I added a couple slides showing the extension that they could do
10:30, by the way, we're on the agenda,
on the 12th.
on the 12th.
So you can look at the, on the county website, you can look at their previous meetings to know where we got to the point of the update on the 12th. And then on the 12th, you can watch the 10:30 presentation by Mr. Priestman of our infrastructure.
Boy, we're in big trouble now. Any questions for our executive director? Getting off easy, John. Agenda item number 28. 4 items from the board.
Talk about the meeting with
You want to talk about the meeting with the colonel?
Well, we did have several meetings with the Army Corps of Engineers. They did a presentation at the Economic Council, I think it was Economic Council luncheon, And then later in the afternoon, there was a presentation, a meeting with the Army Corps, the VOCC, and the City Council at City Hall. Much of that meeting was arrived at that the preferred method that's being looked at, I think it's item CC,
See what
that the Army Corps is leaning towards benefits discharges, lessens discharges to the East Coast while increasing discharges southerly or to the West Coast. And item CC is not in the most advantageous choice, iteration, if you will, for public supply uses. We had that brief meeting with the Army Corps and expressed our interest that public supply, our needs for the OUA, are the source, is the source of water for the community is out of Lake Okeechobee, and that increasing the availability of supply only helps the coastal community in that they don't receive as high a discharge, albeit much, much smaller. The problem that we also shared with the Army Corps was that they are fixated on a lake level, 10.5, 11.5, less than 10. And what I shared with them is after the most recent bad storm seasons in '04 and later storm season, there has been a buildup of lake shore sediment in Government Cut and in the shoal between our intakes and the lake. So if you were trying to get the lake down to some prescribed level, 10.5, it still might prohibit us getting water from the lake to our intake at 11. So for us, it's not a magical elevation of 10 or 10.5 or 9. It's whatever that lowest level that prevents lake water from getting to our intake. And so if they really wanted to know where that is, they need to do an underwater survey, a bathymetric survey at this point to know where the high points are, the shoals, that would prevent the lake water from getting to us. They addressed the issue of blue-green algae. Blue-green algae is certainly an impact potentially to the OUA, but where our intake is, it's so close to the Kissimmee River outfall that we're more under the influence of the Kissimmee River than the lake itself. So we had a very good meeting with the colonel, and we took him on a tour at the lake and through the water plant. They seemed receptive to what we had, and I told them that for $20 million they could build us a new water plant that utilizes wells, and we would be off the lake. I don't know, they certainly won't take us up on that, but when they talk about the billions of dollars that they do on other projects, it's 20-25 million for new treatment plant.
If you weren't raised here like some of us, you wouldn't know where Cut's at. Used to that Cut, when you stepped off in it, you floated your hat.
Or when you dropped your anchor, it went
Yeah.
way down.
Yeah.
And
now it's just full of mud.
Yes, sir. So we sent him a couple pictures. We met with him. I can tell you that, as luck would have it, as soon as these meetings were lined up, we got a reach out from Congressman Mast's office for a telephone call. And the day after the Army Corps left, we had a video conference call with Representative Mast. I can tell you that I expected to be listening more than speaking with the man. But I will tell you, he was quite different. He had questions. He listened. I don't know where it's going to take us, but he was at least sharing that interest in how does the lake impact of the OUA with providing water to the city and the surrounding area. It was a different phone call. I was expecting to be more of told what we needed to do as opposed to listening, but he did ask.
It's a first.
He did listen. I don't know that it's going to change anything, but it was an interesting phone call.
Apparently, he was fact-finding because he was asking questions that John could not answer about West Palm Beach's treatment system and things like that. So he was looking for some answers that we could not answer, or John could not answer.
Well, I'm not about to answer.
Correct.
I mean, West Palm Beach is West Palm Beach, so I don't know what their policy decisions are. I don't know how their treatment plant operates. I won't even go there. 'Cause he was trying to compare our process for blue-green algae versus what they do wrong. I'm just not going there. I don't know the first thing about it. Not for me to answer.
That seemed to be the agenda I saw he had. He wanted to get some information on that, but then he switched around and listened to what you had to say. So I thought it was very well received.
It was different. It was a pleasant phone call. Hopefully, we answered their questions, and he can understand the issue of picking a water surface elevation is not necessarily advisable for us unless there's other work done.
Well, they're all over the board. They went from wanting all of Mark Hunter's to 184 acres. And it's went from this massive project of we're gonna flood the whole D.L. Pierce Ranch and Johnny's and all that to we're gonna put Paradise Run back in. And it's just, it's crazy. That's what they come in, and I looked at the paperwork the other day, they've asked for 184 acres there on the, down on the bottom. And it runs, they take in all the girls' property up on, Buckhead Ridge end. They take in that whole 500 and all through there. But as they get back to Paradise Run, it keeps getting smaller and smaller. Well, you've been back there. So they've asked for 184 acres of that. It just keeps going down as they get over into the old Drenick place. And all they want to do is just push water, like we told them 10 years ago, or 7 years ago. If you want to fill that up, I'll throw the John Deere on the dike and have it full in 2 days. You know, we've asked them to put culverts in and everything, so they're all over the board on what they're gonna do. You know, it went, again, they were gonna flood that whole mark, and everybody was gonna have to move, and, you know, they were gonna come within 100 yards of the road or something like that. And now they would never get within 1,000 yards of the road, or it's just all over. Then they wanted deep wells, and the tribe said no on deep wells, and it's just. But Likes Brothers got their new facility going there at Brighton. Anyway, you don't know what they're gonna
Any
do.
other items from the board?
Yeah, did the start time officially change from till 8:30 from now on?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We did that, what, 2 months ago, I think.
you were in court.
All right, yeah. Just want to make sure. I hate you guys missing out on my input.
We need you.
We need you.
Okay, being no other business coming before the board, meeting is adjourned.
And I won't take that back. You can redo it again.
There's no room in it, you can tell it ain't.
Well, what ends up happening is they end up with a whole thing full of